it's just too bad that Joe Knox isn't down in front so I can really wrap it and we can have somebody really jump. Well, here we go again. We've got the candidates are here. Uh-oh. He's playing Gene Lane. Use the mic. Okay, we'll use the mic. I expect it, as always, everybody to keep their comments in line, respectful of everyone. If you're not, I will call you on it. And we've got Shane Wells here. He's not in uniform, but he said he'd bounce anybody. I just expect it to be good and even-tempered, and everybody use good common sense, and we can have a good meeting. So with that, I'm going to use just as the slate was handed to me. So we'll start with the Board of Selectmen. So if we've got 5 chairs up here, if those who are running for selectmen would come up and take a seat, then we'll progress. You will each have 3 minutes to give a statement of why you are seeking the office. And
we'll keep going one more, I think.
And then there will be questions afterwards. So you can decide among yourselves who wants to go first. And all of the mics are live down there. So we have one for questions over here, or if you could walk up to one of the ones on the front of the table too. So, gentlemen.
Let me start. All right. So, hello. My name is Donald Hodgson. Many of you know me as DJ. I think it would be nice if you understood who I was as a person a little better. When I was 17, I was unfortunately forced out of my house by my stepdad. So, I slept on another family member's couch to finish high school. I got my first apartment and full-time job at 18, working for Globe Fire Suits in Pittsfield. It was right around when I turned 22 when I realized, even though I worked a full-time job, I really had no direction. Unfortunately for me, my Uncle Steve told me I was moving in with him. Anybody that knows Steve, trust me, he didn't ask, he told me. It was then a job opened up for the transfer station part-time with what I call my biggest father figure I had. So I applied. And at that time, the board member, Scott Breyer, Marion Knox, and Jim Hadley, they took a chance and gave me a shot. I worked part-time for the transfer station for the next 14 years while maintaining a full-time job. Over the last 20 years, 14 of those working 7 days straight, I've only taken 1 sick day, and that was to be by my uncle's side when he passed. I bought my first house in Northwood in 2008, in the same mobile home park I grew up in, right across the street from my mom, so I could keep an eye on her after my stepdad passed. I met my wife in 2004, who was also a lifetime Northwood resident. We have been together for 16 years. Sadly, we have no children. 4 years ago, we were expecting our first child. Unfortunately, God had other plans. I settled down in this town because I love it. I care about the people because Northwood is home. I know I might not be as polished as some of the other candidates, but I need you to think about what this town is comprised of. Yes, we have houses over 400,000, but we also have a large amount of mobile homes. I believe it's important that we get all of the members of town a voice. With the new 5-member board, we have the opportunity to represent all aspects of Northwood. So I'm here to represent all of Northwood, not forgetting the lower income population that sometimes gets left behind. I care about the people who are living paycheck to paycheck. I understand their needs because I grew up that way. It's important to have great leadership in our town. It is also important that we listen and represent all the voices that create our community. In my 3 years term as selectman, I attended every selectman meeting except for one when my uncle passed. We've had 23 meetings since August 14th, 2018. I also helped erect the first ice rink, along with hiring the first full-time chief, and from all reports, that transition seems to be going well. I feel that with hiring of a TA with previous experience, we can build this town to where we all want it. Thank you.
That's perfect 3-minute timing.
That was the timekeeper.
You can tell the DJ practiced.
I did, a lot.
Okay.
Should we just work our way down the table? All right. So, good evening. First of all, thank you for letting me come and join this wonderful group of people tonight. I think if you look at the 5 men at the front of the room, it's easy to say that I am definitely the newcomer to this group. My wife and I bought our first home in Northwood in 2007, chose to settle down roots here and start our family. At this point, we've got 2 wonderful little boys and a great dog. And last summer, we were looking to move, and after a long conversation, we decided that our number 1 priority in finding a new home was going to be to stay in town. We had really created some amazing relationships with a lot of the people in this room. We believe in Northwood in terms of having a ton of potential and a lot of growth opportunities. And it's where we want to stay and watch our children grow up. So my campaign for selectmen is really heartfelt. It's an effort to give what I can towards this community. And it boils down to 3 major components that I'm running on. The first thing is that I think our select board needs to be fair. We need to make sure that regardless of what your last name is, or how long you've lived in town, or what part of town you live in, that if you've got business in front of the board, you're going to be treated in the exact same way as anyone else. I also think part of being fair is being transparent. I think there are some aspects of town who believe that the board is conducting business outside of the public eye. And I think that's an important issue to address and make sure that folks have answers and feel confident that the public business is being conducted in public. I'm running on this issue of civility. I think it's important that when public business is being conducted, that we don't devolve into shouting matches. You know, this isn't World Wrestling Entertainment. This is how we run our town. And I think it's important to show some decorum. I'm not an expert in parliamentary procedure, but I think it helps run a meeting for sure. You know, if you have something to say, you need to say it in a way that allows everyone to hear it, including every member of that board and every member of the public who took the time out of their day to go participate in that meeting. And continuing to show each other with as much respect as someone deserves and should expect when they come before the board with business. And the third aspect of my platform is just common sense, sensibility. There's a sense, I think, amongst some people in the town that there's 2 groups, those who are dedicated to spending every cent and those who don't want to spend any money. And the truth is that I don't think that's true. Most of us understand that we care about managing our tax numbers, right? No one wants to pay high taxes. But we also don't want to go without basic services that help our neighbors. So those are the 3 things: fair, civil, sensible. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for coming. My name is Dave Ruth. I live on Route 4 for the last about 32 years. I've been in Northwood. Born and raised in Haverhill, Mass. Before we ended up here in Northwood. My wife Lorraine and my 3 kids, Jillian, Jake, and Haley. I really started getting involved with the town, I guess, as my kids were getting older and we got involved in sports. I was there about 25 years ago and we worked in baseball. We started all the girls' sports, softball, basketball, soccer. And we was quite involved with my kids plus all the kids in town. That was my first indoctrination into volunteering and helping out, something I believed in. I got involved in, I don't know if you want to call it politics, but I got involved in the town with the school board. I was in the school board for probably about 8 years, and now we'll be finishing up. I am completing a term of somebody that had to move out of town with the school board. I am running for selectman for the 1-year term, and like probably everybody here sitting here at the table, I'm doing it because I think I can help. I think I can help to improve the way the selectmen's in the town One of the things I do over the years, since I started getting involved, is the first thing I say to when I join a group is, I'm here to help, and the only rule I have is that we have to agree to disagree. You have to be able to give your own 2 cents worth, you gotta be able to argue with different people, you've gotta be able to state your case. But then, when it's voted on, you move on. One of the things, this will be something that goes on from Robbie now to Matt, is common sense. You have to just have common sense. One thing I've done, I've always said it's 50-50. I made decisions for the kids at that school that I thought were necessary, even if the town was probably thinking it was wrong. And I've made decisions for the town because I didn't think we could afford things, or I didn't think that was right. So you've got to be able to make a decision and be able to stand by the decision you made. I refereed a lot of basketball and umpired a lot of baseball, and I know 50% of every call I ever made, there was somebody in the stands, or now there will be somebody in the community that will meet me in Hannaford and give me an earful. But you've just got to be able to make that decision, stand by it, and make it fair and objectively. I may think it's the wrong decision, but then I feel, you know what, it is really better for the town, and most of the people in the town want it that way. So that's how I vote. I study everything that comes before me. I think about it. Should I say I pray about it? Back in my upbringing. It is common sense, and you hear it a lot. Really, you've got to make the right decisions.
Well,
You can't breathe in between, can you?
I haven't tried.
Thank you. My name is Tim Jandever. It's nice to see such a large crowd here. I'm not going to tell you a whole lot about myself. If there's some questions, you're certainly welcome to ask. I want to bring up something else that's bothered me a lot, and I want you to understand it so that you understand why my interest is the taxpayers. And I really worry about the taxpayers who are struggling. Our taxes are fairly high, and frankly, it bothers me. Last year, one of our wonderful select persons from a non-public session let it be known to a particular woman in this town that my taxes were late. And there's a variety of reasons for that, but mostly it's health related. Starting with bladder cancer, I've had multiple 2 shoulder replacements, 2 knee replacements, and a whole bunch of stuff like that. I got behind, and I'm sorry. 2 months from now, I'll be caught up. And I tell you that because I'm not alone. I think one of the gentlemen in town here pointed out that 4% of the taxpayers are behind. I think that with all of the expenditures that they're looking at this year, that could certainly get to 6, 8, 10% in a few years, and that really bothers me. So the fact that I was behind really was between the selectmen and myself, but for whatever reason, this individual decided, once she found out that it's all over Facebook, you can go on Facebook yesterday, it's on there, and she feels that that's real important to know. The difference between her and I is that some years ago, many of you will remember here that I recognize in here, we had one of our fellow town people really had some health issues, and they were going to lose their home. They had, I think, got to where they had received their last notice from the town. So for me, I put a letter to the editor in, and astounding how much money people sent to help this family out. And I was able to take that money with the wife, meet with the selectmen, and they're still in their home. And that's the difference between me and this lady. And it bothers me that that's real important to her, but I guess it is. I really care about the taxpayers, and when I see something like a $6 million safety complex and realize that that's twice what we should have, it bothers me a lot. And the worst thing about running for these positions is I lose my privacy, which is more important than anything except my family. But I wanted to bring that to you tonight because, frankly, it was nobody's business, but she wanted to make it, so I want everybody to know. I was behind in my taxes, and by golly, I'm almost caught up, and I'm healthy, And I'll climb Mount Katahdin in 3 years when I'm 75, and I'll continue doing my Allagash trips. And I'm very proud of that. I'm not embarrassed that I got behind. I'm not humiliated that she told you. I'm just happy to be where I am. And thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name's Hal Kreider, and I just want to thank the Harvey's Lake Women's Club and the Friends of the Library for putting this on. It's a great crowd, so thank you for being here. I'm running for selectman, frankly, because I think the town needs new leadership. My wife and I moved here 12 years ago, and I've said it many times, it's my hope and dream that we live here till we pass. So we take a very long-term view of how things happen in the community. We want what's long-term best for the community. When we first moved here, we came up from Hudson. I was civically active there for 25 years. But when we came to Northwood, I did not get involved right away. I wanted to learn a little bit more about the town before I tried to do something for the town. I spent the first couple of years doing that, learning about the history in the town. Once I did get involved, though, I have to tell you, I really enjoyed it. The folks here in town are just a hoot to interact with, and I like that. And so after I ran for budget committee, then I ran for moderator. I got on the economic development committee, and right now I'm on the planning board also. And I have to tell you, I enjoy it. I am retired, but when I was working in industry, I worked for a whole range of companies, startups to large multinational companies, and my job there was to help them save money or improve the way they made money. And I did a lot of that for them, so I have a lot of experience. Also a lot of experience with contracts and dealing with a wide range of people from coast to coast. So I think I can help there too. I share some of Matt's views in terms of how we should conduct ourselves and how we do things. And I think if you want to look at the tapes, you can go take a look at the tapes for when I run the meetings as moderator. You can look at the tapes for when I'm on the planning board. You'll see that I question everything. I want to make sure I know all the details. Same thing on the budget committee. If you watch the budget committee tapes, you'll see that I probably ask more questions than anybody else. And from that perspective, I take a long-term view. So I will tell you right up front, if spending a little money now means we save more money later, I'm going to vote for that. But I have to be convinced, and like others, I'm just as concerned about my taxes as everybody else. So I'd like the opportunity to be your selectman. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see Richard Wolf. Am I just missing him, or is Wolfie somewhere else? Okay, I'll open it up to questions, and again, I ask that you be civil with it, and you can direct your question to whoever. And use the mic or one of the mics in the front. Other questions?
Really, no questions? Seriously? Somebody ask a question, please. Oh, I didn't get all prepared for somebody to not ask a question.
Hey guys, I don't have to direct it at a person. Can I just ask a question?
Ask a question.
All right. So here's the question, guys. My name is Ryan Hannavin. A lot of you guys know me from sports in town. I coached the lacrosse team at Co-Brown. I helped build the Black Bear lacrosse program. I do a lot with the town rec. Got a lot of parents that I see in here that have their kids. There's hundreds of parents in this town that have kids playing sports, and one of the things that we've really tried to do in this town is build practical sports programs at low cost so that everybody has opportunities. There's a field up on Route 4 right now that's a beautiful field, but there's a lot of rock up there, and I've heard a lot of grumbling about stuff that's happened. I would love to hear what the select board and the guys that are up here right now would do to help move that along, because it sounds like we have these great resources that wouldn't take that much to put into play. And I'm not looking for a turf stadium with lights. I'm looking for a grass field that kids can play, pick up baseball or lacrosse or football on. So I would love to hear what you guys would do as a select board, just to, again, help promote sports in the town. Thanks.
So I grew up in Northwood, and I used to play. I actually went to Co-Brown when they first started the field up there, when they first put the upper field. So I agree with you. I'd love to see that field done. What I would do is, I think we've had Dave Dacco offer us some free time, and the biggest issue we've had is insurance waivers. So I think we need to find a way we can get around that somehow, so we can use these volunteers to help us lower the cost to get that done.
So there was an article in today's paper where I was referred to, at least I believe it was referring to me, as a recreation person. And the truth is, that's a mantle that I'll proudly wear. I am a recreation person. I'm actually a professor of recreation at UNH. That's my job. So people do love to laugh
He's got
at
a
that.
degree to show it.
You can get a degree in that. Several people in town have one. So I take recreation very seriously. And the truth is that recreation is one of the things that bring young professionals into a community. It's something that increases property value within a community. The state of New Hampshire has a program called Stay Work Play, where they've really focused on slowing down the brain drain of young professionals, educated young families leaving the state. And one of their top 3 priorities is to make sure that we're offering adequate recreational programming for those people and their families. So we're not just talking about sports, we're talking about youth development programs where our kids learn how to be decent human beings. We're talking about adult programming. It's really easy to load up a bus full of folks, take a trip somewhere, and have it not lose money, but even put a couple of dollars into the revolving fund. There's ways to create a recreation department that provide a huge value to a community. I think the ball fields that Ryan's asking about are definitely a part of that, that math. The ball field is going to allow us to do more programming, but it's not just a sports venue. We need to be doing community events. The Beanhole Bash can't be the only one time a year we come together as a community. We need to do more things like our trunk or treat program that we run for the kids at Halloween, or our family fun day that we put together as the Recreation Commission a couple of weekends ago. The looks on families' faces when they have a chance to meet a neighbor they didn't know, or for kids to create a new friendship, or to come together as a community and realize that we're stronger together than we are apart, I think is really valuable, and recreation is a huge part of that for me. And I think if you can really break it down, if you're interested in seeing how the numbers play into it in terms of things like property value and long-term outcomes, I'm happy to share them with anyone who wants to see that. So to me, it's a priority, but one priority amongst many in that field of recreation. To the idea that I'm a recreation person, I do want to make it clear it's not my only priority in this town.
Yeah, I'm right now still on the Recreation Commission. And what we have up there is the 2, what I call the lower fields. We designed those about 10 years ago, which is really developed for the kids in this town. The biggest group is under 12, and it's probably just going to stay that way forever. And that's why we designed 2 little fields to get soccer, lacrosse. You could still play t-ball on those fields. The upper section, I call the upper section, just to go another 1,000 feet on a dirt road to get to it. There is a full-size baseball field already built. Hasn't really been maintained well, and the problem is that was built for probably 13 kids. We have a plan this year that we're going to go up there this spring and take out the infield grass, fill it with what they call ball field mix, basically dirt, so that we will then have a field that will serve softball, baseball, all little league. It still can be used for what I call a major league team of Babe Ruth kids, 13, 15 years old. And we really have been talking, and we will do it this year, I hope, an adult softball league. They go down to the school fields they hit the ball 300 feet. The school fields, they're all 200 feet. So I don't know why they park their cars where they do. That's their problem. So this year we will have and there's about 60 people that want to play adult softball. So we will be able to have that program this year. Last week we had a group, we called it just a family fun day at the skating rink. We couldn't get cleared off because of the bad weather. But we had 60 people, young people. I was probably not the one young people, I was the old person. But 40 kids, 12 and under, sliding on a hill. I call it a septic tank hill because that's what my kids slid on. So there's people want to go out and have something in town. They all got together. We had s'mores, we had hot chocolate. It was just sponsored by the town. So to get to your point, we got to finish a field up there. It would be a full-size football, lacrosse, soccer field. That's the holdup up there now, is to get that one finished. And that would take some money and some real work, but we can get it done.
We have almost 200 kids right now that are playing lacrosse in town, and they're going to run around on the grass up there. Yep. And they all have parents, and I do the math, and that adds up to quite a few folks that would be pretty happy with that. So.
And the adults all want us, the young adults, not my adults. Friends. You can play it.
I'm not sure how long we've been working on the ball fields up there, but it's been a long time. Certainly as a selectman, there was warrant articles for hundreds of thousands of dollars that we approved some years ago. And it's been a steady improvement. It still needs a lot, and I understand that. I don't think anybody really looked at how lousy a piece of land it was for the purpose that we wanted to make it. It is just full of ledge, and it's going to require more blasting. There have been, for instance, one gentleman in town offered to do that blasting and clear out a lot of that ledge in exchange for some of the gravel, I think half or something like that. But we keep running into roadblocks with insurance and things like that. That makes it really, really costly. So I think recreation is important. I also think that we have to look at that we're a small town. 8-9 years ago, we had 729 kids in school in Northwood. Today it's closer to 500, 513, I think. And that's too bad. I wish we could change that around because the more kids, the more taxpayers, the more we can all share in the expenses. So I think recreation is important. I think we have to figure out how to do it so that we can all afford it. And certainly start with those ball fields. But it's going to take some money, and we have to figure out where and how that's going to come from. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with everybody that's talked so far. Recreation can really be very fulfilling, and it also builds community involvement and a sense of community. I grew up in a town called Boyertown, Pennsylvania, and in Boyertown, they were very proud of their Legion baseball team. So proud that they built a ball stadium that I think is equivalent to most semi-professional ball stadiums. They did it with very little taxpayer money. They did it with a lot of volunteers. And yes, somehow they figured out how to deal with the insurance, which maybe has gotten a little worse these days. But I see other towns that do some things where they bring volunteers in and they do things in some manner that gets them through that insurance thing. Now, maybe they can't get through all of them, but I think that's part of what we got to do. And it not only saves us money when we do it that way, but again, when you work together to do something, I think that really brings the community together. And I think we just got to find a way to do that, because the recreation is something that can bring us together. Thank you.
Other questions? Yes,
I'm Mary Fiola, and I live on Old Turnpike Road, and I have a question about the item on the warrant that transfers the responsibility for expending the amount in the Capital Reserve Fund. I believe it is, and I don't have a copy of the warrant in front of me, but the Public Safety Complex Capital Reserve Fund transfers the responsibility for spending that money to the Board of Selectmen, and it doesn't actually make clear from whom that responsibility is being transferred. In other words, who has the responsibility now for voting to expend the Public Safety Complex Capital Reserve Fund? I would assume it's the voters themselves, the town.
No, I can certainly answer that. So,
Thank you.
This is if you look back through the warrant articles, this is a recurring problem. Yeah, I know that it is. This is a recurring problem that is lack of management, in that when that article was put into place last year, asking us to take some money from a police fund and putting it into the into the safety complex, they should have put at the end of that and to allow the selectmen to expend. Time and time again over the years, they've neglected to do that. So then they have to come back the next year when they found out that they didn't do it and add another warrant article. So really, nobody can spend that money. And so there's a big issue where the town spent $19,000 for a conceptual design on the safety complex.
That has nothing to do with that.
Well, it certainly does. And the selectmen spent the money, and originally, if you look at the minutes, their intention was to, if the bond passes, to take the money out of the bond and pay back that $19,000. They figured out that they couldn't do that, so the money just sits there. Nobody can spend it until they approve a warrant article allowing the selectmen or somebody else to spend it. Did that answer your question?
I believe it does. So we don't have capital reserve funds that where expenditures are approved on the warrant itself. In other words,
Yes, we do have some.
So in other words, there are some capital reserve funds which can only be
Probably
expended by
every one but this one.
the voters themselves.
No,
So-
actually, that's not true. We can expend out of the transfers fund without going to the voters.
That's a different.
It's still a fund.
There are different funds for different things, and frankly, if you really wanted to get into this, I'd get Jim Valancourt up here. But
So-
the answer is simply that on most of these funds, the capital reserves, you have to give somebody the permission to spend it. So in other words, I can't spend it because you didn't give me permission.
I understand.
And the selectmen can't spend it because you didn't give them permission.
But can the
They didn't
voters
ask for it.
spend it at, does it have to then be put to the voters on the warrant, I guess is my question. Does
Jim is shaking his head yes, so I'm going to believe Jim.
Mr. Kreider is shaking his head yes. Can I ask Mr. Kreider, who's running for selectman, what is your,
Well, you
Understand
know how
that?
Mary, you know how I handle things at the deliberative session, and that is I turn to my left and look for the lawyer in the, because regardless of what we say, it really comes down to what legal opinion is going to pass. And the law is very clear, as Tim just said, if nobody is appointed to expend the funds don't get expended. But there are some articles on the warrants. I'd have to go look through to give you a specific example. Yeah. But the first one that comes to mind is like when Northwood Lake wants to treat their milfoil. That one you directly say, should we approve that money? Right. And then they go get the money and they spend it. They're able to disperse that
Yes.
money directly. So that one, when we vote on it, we as voters are saying we want the town to spend this money.
okay, so I guess my original question was, are we transferring the authority for spending money from that fund, from the voters themselves, to the
Yes.
selectmen? And
Yes.
that was my...
Yes,
Okay.
that's exactly what we're trying to do.
Okay, thank you. I wanted that information, thank you.
Other questions?
Hello, everybody. My name is Steve Robinson. I've been in town since 1985. My wife's grandparents back in the 60s. Full-time resident for the past 13 years. This is my first town hall meeting. Sorry, I apologize.
Welcome.
But anyway,
Welcome. You're a regular now.
Don't get me going. Don't be laughing at you. I have a question for each one of you. This safety complex has me worried. Like the gentleman last to the left, next to the left, next to the last guy on the left. Like you said, a lot of elderly people have fixed budgets. What do you think your impact is going to be financially? Well, let me finish, per year, and I'd like to hear your takes on each one of them, right. Your opinions on each, your thoughts on every on this matter. Because I'm personally, I'm worried about it.
Okay.
Because I live on a dirt road, I pay over $6,200 in taxes, and I get absolutely zero.
I have the answer for that. So I did.
Well, I want to hear from everybody on the board.
I'll start. I did a little research today, and there's 1,628 residential land and buildings that are not in current use. The average assessed value is $205,000. I rounded it up. If you take that and divide that by 1,000, it's $242 per household per year. If you divide that by $365, it's 67 cents a day for the 20 years. But it will go down. It will go down every year.
So 20 years, and then 20 years after that, we get more recurring debt on top of that, on top of that, on top of that.
No, once 20 years, it's paid off.
Something else is going to pop up. 5 years on the road, 10 years on the road, 15 years on the road.
I understand that.
So 60 turns to the dollar, dollar. So it just multiplies. That's what's got me concerned. All I see is my taxes going up, and I'm not getting nothing for it, and that scares the heck out of me. And like this gentleman on the end here, you get a lot of people in this town on fixed budgets that can't afford this thing. I understand we want to be, well, I shouldn't say that. I want to be fully correct. It's a small town. I moved here for a small town atmosphere, a small town living, and now all I see is multi-million-dollar homes popping up. You know, there's homes on my lake that are worth $750,000. Before, there were camps. I mean, how much is this town going to absorb and the taxpayer going to absorb? So that's what I have to say.
Anybody else want to address it?
Sure, I'll be happy to address at least my thoughts on the issue. So even just the end of your statement there around those new homes coming into town, that has the potential to actually decrease your tax burden, right? So as those new developments are coming into town, it may change the landscape of town a little bit, and it may feel a little different than it used to. And I think that's something that we struggle with as the town of Northwood every day. We're balancing this traditional rural small town feeling with our desire to limit our tax burden and to increase the amount of programs and services that we can deliver within a reasonable framework. Managing that balance requires, more than anything, I believe, input from the community. And I think that's where we've run into trouble with the safety complex is, first and foremost, a matter of perception. I think a lot of people in town don't feel like they were adequately asked for their thoughts and opinions along the way. I think there's some questions around how the process went down. I personally am going to vote in favor of the safety complex on Tuesday for multiple reasons. And the first thing is that I think if we don't handle it now, we're going to be forced to handle it down the road. And we're going to have to do it in a rush. And rush jobs don't go as well, and they usually cost more. So we can pay for it now, and we can do it in an orderly and thoughtful fashion. And yes, the price tag is scary. I get the sticker shock. And I appreciate the needs of residents on a fixed income to not get, you know, in jeopardy of losing their homes. I appreciate that very much. But if not now, we're still going to have to deal with this down the road. And for me, if that idea of the number of 6 million keeps getting bandied about, it actually could be significantly less, right? Given how things go in terms of the construction, the way things shake out. If that number was more like 4 million, the difference over a 20-year bond spread across the entire tax base of the town is fairly small. So for me, I'd rather do it now. We have a plan. We have the location cited. It seems like it's a great spot. And the idea of saying no to this kicking it down the road and having to deal with it without having a plan, I think doesn't do our town any good. So that's why I personally am in favor. Now, the beauty of the warrant article is that everybody in this room and everybody in town gets to speak their piece on it on Tuesday. So if the town says no, my personal hope is that we'll still pass the land purchase and have that in our pocket. And that if it requires us to backtrack and start the process fresh, increase transparency, increase public input, and truthfully, probably wind up in the exact same position a year later. That's why I personally will be voting yes.
Okay, we're talking about, I am in favor of buying a lot to build a building. I am not in favor of the building they've proposed. It's been going on for probably more than 5 or 6 years talking about building a facility that we need. I personally believe we probably do need something. But I'm not happy with the way the process went this year. I just think it was kind of rushed through and all of a sudden, it's it. I've always been, like I said, committees I've been on. Okay, what is plan A? You want to build this $6 million. No, what's plan B? What's plan C? What can we do? And I don't think any of that was done. But I really believe we need a spot. And there aren't many spots that have come available on Route 4, which probably where a building should be. To go to your other part of the question, yeah, it's going to be 20 years. In the old days, they used to do things in town and you just did it and you paid once, which meant everybody in this room paid for it. Now, hopefully I might be here for 20 years, but at my age, I'm not sure. So somebody is going to come in behind me and they're going to share in the cost of it. So it is not going to probably decrease the cost. It's always going to be something to maintain. But I don't think we can really pick and choose what we want. I live on Route 4. I could say, get rid of the whole highway department. They plow my road. They take care of it. I don't have a worry. But it wouldn't be fair to the rest of the people in town. So we have to have something. I mean, I won't say what I used to say about, you know, we just can't pick and choose. We have to say, what do we want overall? And there's going to be a cost to it. What I would like to bring to us, hey, let's really work on the costs. What can we do to keep that cost, get what we really need, and keep the costs at a reasonable dollar? That's all.
I'm going to have absolutely no problem whatsoever voting no on this issue. I think it's absurd. I was on the original committee in 2014. We did our job. We looked at an awful lot of things. We went to many other facilities, from New Hampton, Barrington, Lee, Dover, all over the place, as a group. Sunapee, we looked at a lot of different safety committees, safety complexes. We looked at a lot of other issues, because there are many other issues that this committee did not address. One of the issues I worry about is whether we really and truly need the other fire station. That needs to be looked at. I have my opinion, but that doesn't make me right. We need to get a professional opinion as to do we really need it or not. I'm very concerned with what would happen to the Ridge fire station. Giving that to the school will be nothing but a money pit. I'm telling you, you will be very sorry if you give that to the school. It would be a huge mistake. I absolutely, positively, with no reservations whatsoever, think that we can build a safety complex in this town for under $3 million that will fill all of our needs. No question in my mind. There's many of them out there that do that. The one in Farmington that everybody's talking about is actually 3,000 square feet larger than this one. It's much better constructed, which gets into a deep conversation that we don't have time for. It would not go on that piece of land. That's a crappy piece of land. I have no desire for that piece of land. That piece of land should go to some business that can build on the front of it, because the back is wetlands, etc. There are several other much better pieces of land. And I don't understand why everybody seems to think we have to be on Route 4. We could be just off of Route 4 and have no problem whatsoever. The land would be cheaper. Building on Route 4 whether it's the school or something else, that's what you did in the olden days because you didn't have the machinery, the plows and stuff. But we could build that 3 or 4 blocks, a half a mile, a quarter of a mile off of Route 4 and be much better off. Much better off. There is absolutely nothing desirable about that piece of land. And it is the reason why, for the most part, this is such an expensive thing. They have to do a 2-story, they have to have an elevator, and I could go on and on. It's just plain dumb. I will have no problem voting no.
I'm going to tread carefully here because as your moderator, I do want to try to avoid influencing your vote. So just please respect that. But Steve, I will say this. I have talked to a lot of people in town that you reference. People that really are struggling, really do have a lot of concerns about how much the proposed complex costs. But I'd also say this, almost to a person, those people that would struggle with this payment, that would have a hard time, have told me if they really understood the process, if they really understood why what was proposed, and they really felt that it was what we needed and it was the right cost, even though it would be a struggle for them, they would vote for it. And I think that's where we're struggling right now. I think we've pretty much demonstrated the need to do something for both the police and the fire departments, but I don't think we've done a good job of explaining the process and stuff. But I have experience, with nonprofits and in business, and when you make the right case to the people, they'll do the right thing. But right now, I don't know that the people are convinced it's the right thing.
I do want to say one thing. I appreciate our police officers. I think they do a hell of a great job. I really do. I personally experienced a really bad situation in my house, and I called 911, and they were right there within 10, 15 minutes, and I couldn't believe it. I was actually really shocked. I like what the second gentleman said. We need more transparency, more openness about this. I don't think this timing is right now for this even being presented. I do like what you said, and I respect all your opinions. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Other questions?
Hi, do I have to say my name?
Yeah.
Linda Kramers. I'm going to ask to start this way and go down this way this time to DJ last.
Thank you.
Not for any specific reason, but one of the things, and Hal brought it up, and it was what Matt said too, is the transparency, and that goes along with the communication. And I think a lot of us here, and I know friends that aren't here, we don't know what's going on at selectmen's meetings. We have no way of finding out unless we sit on a Saturday morning trying to find watch something that happened 2 months earlier. So I guess I want to know, well, I'll give you an example also because this is something that bothers me. All of a sudden, I understand we have a fire chief that is a paid position versus a volunteer with a stipend. I don't know if everybody in this room knows that. I know it because I thank Becky and Lucy for putting things in the forum, but everybody doesn't get the forum. We don't know things that are going on, so what are you going to do to inform us so that we know what's happening, selectmen meetings, and what's going on with the town?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. It's something that I've thought about quite a bit. I think, based on my experience, for example, I was working for Bear Paw, a land conservation group. I'm the chairman this year of the board. One of the things we did was we went to what's called a consent agenda, which means that everything that the board needs to look at, understand, and approve is summarized in one little capsule. And so, no, you might not get all the details, but at least you get the gist of what's going on. And then if you want to know more, it might say, go look at this part of the website or go do this, that, or the other. And that's The other thing that I want to mention, I've been, quite frankly, ranting and raving about the quality of our website for, I think, ever. Well, no, I was polite the first couple of years, but and I think there's a lot that you can do just with that. But I think one of the things you got to do is you got to present information in a format that's digestible. And you know, I see different minutes and I see things on the planning board, and you know, I'm on that committee and I'm thinking, man, oh man, look at all this verbiage. Where's the summary? And I think some of those things would help. And you know, quite frankly, sometimes just having an open session where people can call or ask questions is important too. Thank you.
I think it's a really good question, Ms. Kramus, I really do. And I have a number of thoughts about it. And I would start with some years ago, very concerned about, in our small town, how do we inform people of what's going on? And so I did a petition warrant article asking the town to approve, and I believe it was $12,000, near there, for a sign outside here similar to what the school has. I didn't want a $40,000, I think it's $41,000 that the Co-Brown has. I just wanted a sign that, you know, we could inform that they're looking for volunteers to serve on the safety complex committee. It's very unfortunate that transparency right now is just not there in this particular town. It's not a hard thing to do on many levels, which was another warrant article I did, trying to get transparency in the town on their bills and everything. But to answer your question, there are many ways. A sign, the Sun, the web page. I've heard Hal over the years, I can't tell you how many times on different committees and boards that I sat with him, complain. Now he happens to really like the computers. Me, not so much. I like the Sun, and that's fine. Many of you like computers, and that's fine. And you go every day. Many of us look at the Sun, and there's other ways. We're really not, as a town, taking advantage of any of them. And so you don't know what's going on. And it doesn't help that we did have a safety complex committee of 6, of only one of which was actually officially assigned, who met 3 times illegally without posting, who didn't make any minutes, and I could go on and on. It shouldn't happen. It just simply, that stuff shouldn't happen, but it does. And whoever said in tonight's, I forget which one of us, said that there needs to be a change. There really does, because it's bad. I think there's 3 lawsuits and 2 more coming. Anyway, we should be more transparent, and we have the means to inform you, we're just not bothering.
This has been a problem for, well, the 30 years I've been here. We live in the corner of Rockingham County, and then we get the Stratford and whatever else around us. The Dover paper dropped Northwood. They don't want anything to do with us. They used to report on a lot of things. The Concord paper dropped us. They used to report on a lot of things. We used to actually have, I think Mrs. wherever she went, Sue, used to write, it was a column, it used to be in the Concord paper. It's tough. When I came here, I used to like the Boston paper because of sports, and then I tried every other one of them, and it's like, it's no good. This is the best paper for us. And I guess anybody in the room that's probably over 50 likes to get their news from the paper. There probably are a few of them that maybe like Hal, a computer. But we could do some other stuff with all the internet things that are out there. We should have a column in that paper every week. And the problem is to have somebody write it. Everybody volunteers. I've been on the school board. Somebody says, oh, I'll do that. And then after a couple of times, I'm like, I ain't got time to start typing all that and send it up. But you still got to come up with a way to do it. If we had even an article in there every week from a different committee, from the selectmen every 2 weeks afterwards, Now, we also have a cable that he's filming. How many people in this room really will go out and watch this on cable, or watch a selectmen's meeting on cable? I know I don't even have cable. I have a dish. So we're paying $35,000 for all this filming all the time, and we're not getting any information out.
It's on
Nobody's
YouTube.
watching it, probably.
It's on YouTube, Dave.
I used to, well, YouTube I don't do. But yeah, there's another way. But we have to sit down. It ain't gonna be brain surgery to figure out that we've got to communicate a lot better. Absolutely. Because we're all seeing it tonight with the questions we've had. We didn't know anything about a fire chief or what really went on to, how did they come up with that plan for a building. So that is one thing we have to work on.
So without rehashing, yes, the website needs improvements. Yes, we should be making better use of social media platforms. We need to get all of our meetings, minutes written and published as quickly as possible, and then video uploaded to YouTube. Thank you to Keith, who's been, I think, doing the heavy lifting on most of that. So with all that aside, though, I think a lot of my thinking on this issue comes from my professional life. So again, I'm a professor at UNH. I have office hours multiple days a week. And during those office hours, my door is open, they're listed, my students know I'm available during those times. If the door is closed, it means somebody else has already availed themselves of my time. The things that people come to me during those office hours with are much more immediate and important than most meetings I sit through in a given week. So I think that issue of availability is really important, and I think, for me personally, I have the ability to spend some time down having a cup of coffee and making myself available, or heading over to Johnson's on Wednesday night for flight night. I'll be there. Come and chat. I think. Hurry up. Yeah, we better go. Setting the expectation that we are not some, unapproachable monolith who makes the town decisions is a message that we need to get out to everyone in town, and we need to reinforce that message as often as possible. The members of the select board are supposed to be the voice of the people. And if we're going to serve as the voice of every member of this town, we need to be not only listening to multiple opinions, which I haven't necessarily seen happening. We need to not only listen to those opinions, we need to actively solicit opinions different than our own. For me, every decision I make, I try to make from a place of information and knowledge. I want to understand as many facets of an argument as possible before I make a decision. Again, maybe part of that is due to work, right? I only have two jobs. I research and I teach.
I'm gonna say that we've got to speed this up.
You got it.
We've got other candidates.
So I'll put a nice ribbon on this. My job is to understand an issue deeply enough to be able to get someone to understand it who knows nothing about it. That means I need to understand it 100%. And I'm gonna bring that mindset to this job. So, yep.
All right. So during my 3-year term, I took the time with Kate to have the first, what we called the super board meeting, where all of the committees got together and we actually talked about this issue. And one of the things that was brought up is the first thing we need to do is when we start this new board is have a right to know hearing. So everybody knows what we can do and what we have to do in order to have a meeting. And then I've talked to Gary a few times. I would like to see us possibly maybe get an IT guy from Co-Brown to come in and help Gary do some more recording so all of the meetings are recorded and can be put on YouTube. And Gary has actually said that he's close to being able to go live, so we can do it live right there. And then I'm also on the same route as Dave, is a quarterly insert. I read Facebook today, and I couldn't believe how much it blew up over just the 2 inserts that was in the paper. So if we did something just like that once a quarter, why wouldn't it be the same? And then we could take those same inserts and make a PDF and put them on the website so people could read them. The people that don't want to don't read the paper. Just like there's tons of ways to get it out there. It's just a matter of finding which avenue the people are going to look at the most to get it out. That's all I got.
Okay. Question.
Yes. Joseph McCaffrey. One of the things that as I attend various meetings over the years, that either I sit on committees or boards, or especially when a fair, and this is not true of the audiences that attend most committees and boards. Anybody that occasionally shows up knows this, or maybe watches. But this is nice to see a number of people turn out for this. And one of the things that I observed and this happened when the presentation was made, for instance, recently before the Select Board for the Safety Committee, was that you hear a lot of good ideas. You hear people, I think comments people make, it sparks somebody else, they think of something, or maybe they already had something in mind. But you hear a lot of people in the community. I'm sorry?
Is there a question you're asking?
Yeah, we got...
Excuse me, Shane, I'm speaking. If you have something to say...
You have to ask a question. It's
No,
not
if you...
question.
You know, if... Moderator...
Shane,
Point of order.
I...
Question.
This is the second time he's interrupted, folks. If he has something to say, I suggest he come to the microphone and say it. So, this is a preface to a question, Shane. You may have not ever encountered something like that. I don't know. So, what I am saying here is that it is interesting to hear folks contribute. And unfortunately, it happens too seldom in town. This may be true of a lot of other towns, certainly true here. It's been my experience.
Joe, I'm going
yes,
to
and so,
get to your question.
Yes, so, well, it's not just a question. We're not here...
State your question.
Excuse me.
You and I have had this go around before.
The purpose of this is to get
get your question out. We have been an hour.
Yes, and this is the most important group that will sit in this town.
Get your question out now.
Mr. Yeah. This is a good exercise for folks to see.
Mr. McCaffrey, if you do not ask your question promptly, I will ask you to sit down.
Your job is moderator, not dictator.
My job is moderator, yes.
Okay.
When I am moderating, and you said you had a question for these men.
I do.
State that question.
The purpose of everybody, as we hear, is people get up, they have comments also. Because the purpose of that...
Mr. McCaffrey, either state your question or sit down. Period.
I think this is a good exercise.
Yes, it is.
Yes. In your unreasonableness. So, the question that and fortunately I've heard a few people reply to, and I don't have just a question.
I'm giving you I'm giving you 30 seconds to ask your question. 1, 2.
If you're going to talk, I can't talk, can I?
Ask your question.
Thank you. I would like to hear a little further. See, I think a bad decision was made. Excuse me, it's part of the question. I think a bad decision was made.
Thank you.
Yeah, oh, wait a minute, I've been interrupted. That's not an accurate representation of the time, okay? I've heard the opinions on the safety complex. The most expensive project the town will endure here in the coming future. I think it has potential to be a good idea. It was poorly done. I've heard Matt Fry express an opinion. I'd like to hear him a little further on this. He seems to accept the process. I observe, and others have. It's an illegal one. The judge even said that, who adjudicated the recent lawsuit. So the town was guilty of infringing on RSAs. Do you think that was a proper process? Would you have sat in on that process and let it go? I mean, because you just indicated, for instance, a few others have objected to it, so this doesn't apply to them. Would you have been okay with that process that just occurred? The lack of transparency and the illegality.
So my response.
I'm going to ask each of you in your response to be as brief as possible, and I expect it to be very brief.
Thank you.
Because this is just going on too long. This is not town meeting. This is to ask questions, and it's just taking too long.
Go ahead.
My response is fairly simple in that I agree with you and I agree with others who have concerns around the process. Having not been in the meetings, I'm not in a position to truly speak about them, and I need to rely on answers from the process of adjudication and from town council, and I would defer to those decisions. My understanding is that the decision was made that the process, if questionable, was able to move forward from a legal standpoint. So that's my answer.
Well, okay.
Hold on, no, let me answer.
Okay,
Okay, I'm gonna let the others answer. too.
Okay, but just in regard to Mr. Fry, please read the opinion of the judge, because she contradicts what you just said. She in fact found, she just allowed it to be put on the ballot. She found it to be an illegal process. Please read.
Yes. The judge gave us a list of things we had to do in order to meet a criteria to allow us to, and as soon as this was brought to the attention of the board that there was illegal meetings, it was taken care of. They started posting meetings and taking care of it. The independent judge ruled that the taxpayers had plenty of time to have their say. We've had 17 meetings since the Safety Complex Committee was put together. Each of them meetings has a 3-minute citizens forum where you can come in and express your views. Each of them has a 3-minute citizens forum. You can come in and express your views.
They were never noticed. How would somebody come?
Every selectman's meeting is posted. How are you not notified?
You just said subcommittee.
No, I said 17 selectmen meetings is what I said. Where we had since then.
I'm going to stop the discussion at this point. This has gotten out of hand. It's out of control. And I've had enough of it. If you can ask these candidates a question with a brief answer, I will allow it. But we have got a number of other candidates here. And to take it all up with just the selected candidates is not right nor proper. And I will not allow it. And I don't think that this is the place to discuss whether the discussions that took place were proper or not. If you've got a question to ask these candidates as to what they will do on a situation or what their qualifications are, okay, I will take that. But we have got all these other candidates and they deserve their 3 minutes too. I agree. So if there is someone with another question for these candidates that pertains to their being elected, I will take it. Do you have a question there?
I do.
Whoa!
And I'm sorry, I don't know all of your names, and I apologize. They don't stick with me real well. But
Matt.
Yeah. You're a researcher. You're a researcher?
In part.
In
correct.
part, yes. In regards to the recreation, what research, where will you go for your research? In researching what we can do, I understand it's an insurance issue. I come from a very small town originally, and they recently rebuilt their pool in town with volunteers. So they found a way around it.
Sure.
So will you go?
Sure. So for me, and I'll be as brief as possible, I find that most municipal insurance providers like Primex are invested in protecting the sort of financial interests of a town and avoiding lawsuits and then mitigating the results or the negative results if one occurs. So they have questions about something like utilizing volunteer labor without having appropriate measures in place to protect the town from liability. But that doesn't mean that it's impossible to do. There's a lot of ways around something like a need for liability coverage by making sure that we're working with bonded and insured providers who can do a job for $1, therefore making it a paid job and allowing them to fall under their insurance coverage, right? That's going to make the town's insurer happy. It's going to cover everybody in terms of potential liability fallout. That's one example of one way to work within the system, not skirting the system at all, just staying within the boundaries of the rules without having to pay full freight for every single thing that comes down the pike. And utilizing volunteer labor is not only a great way to save money, it's a great way to build community. You know, so I serve on the Friends of Recreation committee. When we build our playground, eventually we're going to get there. We're going to do it on the back of volunteer labor because we've spent a lot of time trying to raise money for the equipment. Volunteer labor is going to get that built, and we're going to do it in a way that's both legal and safe.
Are there other questions? If not, thank you, gentlemen, and I'm sorry you all lost your seats. And next, Budget Committee, Virginia Dole. I didn't see Tilda here. I don't know if she is or not. And Ted Wilkinson? Yes. Oh, I did see Ted. Do you wish to come up?
Well, I don't know if it's necessary. I'm running unopposed for a 3-year term.
Good for you.
Want me to take time?
I'll do it this way to speed things up. Are there questions of Ted? He's running for Budget Committee. Anybody have a question of Ted? Thank you, Ted. Thank you. Virginia's not here. Brad Hall. Is Brad Hall here? Cemetery trustee. I don't see Charles Pease either. Library trustee. Gail Toby? Right here. Yes. You want to take the hot seat? Sure. Right, it's all warmed up. And Gail is library, library trustee.
Library trustee.
For what? For 3 years.
For 3 years. This is my second term. I've been here for 9 years in Northwood. Previously, in my other life, I was Human Resource Director for the Nashua School District. And as a trustee, there are 3 of us and 3 alternates. So if one of us isn't there, an alternate fills in with us so we don't delay decisions or anything. We work together for one purpose only. We serve our patrons. We love, love, love our patrons. And so we try to do everything we can, including sending out surveys to meet the needs of our patrons. Presently, we're working on having our building designated as an historic building. And we now know that we qualify to be an historic building. And as soon as they grant us that, that it's probably a little bit of a process they have to go through, then we'll be able to write grants to do upkeep improvements in our building, which we think will save the town money. We'll use preservation money instead of town money. And because projects are really, really expensive, so we think that that will be a good thing. But the real work is done by our director, Donna Bunker, and her staff. And we love, love, love Donna Bunker and our staff. Because when you walk in, if you want to know anything, that's where you go. They are the ones that will give out information to new people, to people who live in town, and because most of the time, that's where the first place where new residents go, is to the library. It was for me, and I've talked to many, many other people the same thing. Our library is a really important link in our town. That's it.
Questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next one is Police Commissioner, Nicole Robler, and Richard Wolf.
Not here.
Still don't see Wolfies. Nicole?
Seat time.
It's all yours.
Good evening. First, thank you to our sponsors, the Women's Club and the Friends of the Northwood Library, and most importantly, thank you for moderating tonight.
welcome. And you've got 3 minutes.
I will stay on track. My name is Nicole Rodler, and I am looking for your vote on March 12th as Police Commissioner for Northwood. I've lived with my family here in Northwood since 2004, and I have been involved in many community activities, from recreation to town sports to I am a parishioner at St. Joseph's. So maybe I've seen your face and maybe I haven't, and hopefully I will. I'm looking to really serve this community in the best possible way I can. Over the last couple weeks since I registered, I have been asked 2 very significant questions. 1, what's a police commissioner? And 2, why am I running? I can share with you, since I've talked to some of our great historians in the community, back in the early 80s, the police commission was developed as a checks and balance with the police department. That's the role of this 3-person board, is to make sure that the voice of the taxpayers and the residents of Northwood is being heard in the decisions that are being made within the police department and the budget process in the police department. As well, it provides a sounding board for the police chief in his decision making. I feel more than ever that this is a time that this is needed. I feel that, given my experience over 20 plus years in law enforcement, I know someone said to me tonight I clean up rather nicely, so thank you. I think I can help in that decision making. I feel as though my experience, my knowledge, and my background, I've worked at Manchester Police Department, rather large, rather busy. We did have a rather nice department that was built too, being that this has been a hot topic of late. And I can tell you I didn't get to enjoy that. I left in the year after it was built. So I can't tell you the cost, I can just tell you how really nice that was. But I work at Rochester Police Department in the juvenile division, and that's where my passion really lies, is with the kids and our future. And I feel as though the knowledge that I'm going to bring to this position is going to help us. You probably have seen in the paper, for those who read the paper, that I have a lot of knowledge. My background is educationally in criminal justice. I have certifications, and hopefully that will help in the decision-making process. And I have priorities. My first priority will be the school resource officer for Northwood School. Being that that is my passion, working with our future, I really want to support that position and help guide and develop what that possibly can be. My other priority will be to help our department in recruiting, retaining, and really attracting officers, making it their desire to be with us. Luckily, I don't have to answer on the safety complex at this moment. Time is up, but I believe in it. I really do. And I believe that this community, I can serve you well, and I would be honored to be that commissioner for you.
Okay, questions?
Really?
Somebody asked her about the complex.
Have I frightened everybody?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God.
Get to the question.
Oh, okay. Jeez. I'm John Boudreau, Main Street. I'm also the animal control officer. Do you have a dog?
I do, and she is
Is she
going to be
registered?
registered. My check is sitting
Okay.
at home.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Oh, me. I don't see anybody for trustee of trust funds. Is Betsy here? I don't see Betsy. Supervisor of the checklist. One candidate here. Tom, brief.
I'll be brief.
Never heard those two words go together before.
Ready? I'm Tom Chase. I'm running to be a supervisor of the checklist and join Judy Pease and Pat Durkin in that role. The reason I want to be a supervisor of the checklist is that I'm tired of standing outside at the elections in the snow and the sleet. And if I become a supervisor of the checklist, I can sit inside and watch what's going on. That's the funny answer. The real answer is, standing outside last November, I watched a number of people walk in who I know are not residents of Northwood. And you walk in and they vote. And I raised this question with a number of people, and I sort of got run around the definition of a resident and being domiciled, and somebody said, well, maybe they voted in Northwood even though they lived in Barrington, but they didn't vote in Barrington, so they didn't vote twice. That didn't make any sense. So there are ways in which the supervisor of the checklist has a responsibility to see, as I all hope you agree, that everybody who comes in to register is really a resident of Northwood and is supposed to be a person who is able to vote here. And that's what I intend to do.
How's that?
The buzzer hasn't gone off yet.
I have some very long answers. So if no questions.
Are there any questions?
Not if he has long answers.
Okay. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Okay, the candidates for school board: Shane Wells, Kim Janderberg, and Stephanie Arroyo. If you're gonna talk so long, you have to have water.
Maybe it's water.
It is. You each have 3 minutes, and you can decide who starts.
All right, yeah, I guess I'm the incumbent, so I'll go first. I'm Shane Wells. I've been on the school board for 3 years. You're probably wondering why do I want to go back for another 3 years. Well, some of you have probably seen this on social media, so I'm just going to go ahead and read it and then go into some other details. I saw this quote the other day that really made me resonate with the reason why I wanted to, so I'm just going to start to read it. Tip your server, hold the door, return your shopping cart, pick up the piece of trash blowing away. Teach your kids that small acts can have a ripple effect. Our choices, our actions, our future. This is a quote I saw the other day and made me think of why I want to run. Again, I feel my time to serve the students, the residents of Northwood, is not over yet. There is more to accomplish. We as a board have added so many resources to the school in the last 3 to 5 years, with the biggest one being consistency within our administration. I'd love to see this continue. I want our choices, our actions as board members to be the future for our children. 5 years from now, I want the narrative to change from Northwood Elementary being an okay school to being a great school. And the best part is already happening. This is the ripple effect of consistency. If you don't already know me, here's a little about me. I'm a parent of 2 children, a coach, a teacher, a soldier, and a police officer. I feel I'm qualified to field and answer questions within our school. I've been a police officer in this town for 13 years and a resident going on 15. I'm active in the New Hampshire National Guard, currently serving the rank as major. I have a bachelor's of science in nursing with a minor in health management policy. I've been involved with the school system since 2006 when my son went to kindergarten. I have taught DARE for the past 10 years and had the luxury of watching former students attend the workforce and college. The education I received through college, the military, and law enforcement has given me many skills, one of which is problem solving. I believe this skill is one that I have developed through my education, through a military and law enforcement training that will continue to benefit this school. When an issue will arise within the school, I have many hats I can wear to help solve the problem. I can bring the school district trust, honor, respect, loyalty, and the most important, integrity. My name is Shane Wells, and I'm running for school board. So, 4 things that I want to go over. One was the consistency, right? The second thing is that we did a 5-year strategic plan. I want to see that get through. I don't want that to drop to the wayside. 3 minutes? 3 seconds. 30 seconds. All right, and then the next one is that we're going to be, one thing I want to bring forward to is the mental health with our children. And this thing called ACE, which is Adverse Childhood Experiences. All right, if we could start learning about mental health with children at a younger age and making sure that they don't have more adverse childhood experiences, the better off in this world. And I wish I could go into it more, but I can't.
Don't worry.
You will?
I will.
So thank you for your time. I really appreciate everybody coming. I do apologize for my little bit of my outburst earlier. I just like to keep things flowing. So, thank you.
So I'm Stephanie Arroyo. Thank you for having me. I apologize for my voice. So it's a good thing it's only 3 minutes. I sound worse than I am. So I am a Northwood resident of only 3 years. I do have a special education background. I've been in special education for 22 years, 10 years being a paraprofessional and an educator in Maine for children who experience significant trauma, emotional and behavioral disorders in a residential treatment facility. I moved here to New Hampshire about 12 years ago when I met my husband and made a little bit of a career change. I've worked at Measure Progress for the last 12 years, developing alternate statewide standardized assessments. So I traveled the country developing those assessments, backing down standards and looking at curriculum across the different state contracts and things like that, training our educators on how to administer those assessments, how to score those assessments. I facilitated statewide standard settings, looking at how kids performed on those assessments, what knowledge, skills, and abilities they were able to demonstrate to develop performance indicators and things like that. So I have a real strong background in curriculum development. A year ago, though, I did make a little bit of a career change. I wanted a better work-life balance because as we moved into Northwood about 3 years ago, I was not able to participate in things that were going on in my children's lives. When you travel the country, you travel and you work 16-hour days. So I made a life change, and I now work for the Granite State Children's Alliance out of Bedford, New Hampshire as their education coordinator and training specialist for No and Tell. So I now travel the state training educators and organizations, adults in New Hampshire, on knowing the signs of abuse. What does that look like? How do we report? What is our mandated reporting policy in New Hampshire? What does that look like? And where do we fall in the child protection system? So I work really closely with the New Hampshire Department of Education, DCYF, the coalition, various other key stakeholders around the state, still with our youth. I serve on several committees around the state as well. I'm not going to go into all of them, but it has led me to this position. I want to be on a committee that directly impacts Northwood and impacts my children. I have 3 daughters who have been in the schools. We moved here after my oldest daughter. We lived in Barrington, and we shuttled her here for all 4 years of high school. Because of the quality education that she received at Co-Brown, we decided we wanted that education for our other 2 daughters. I have a middle schooler and a first grader. So knowing that my kids definitely have different learning styles, I wanted them to grow up with the expectations of Co-Brown so they were better prepared. With my background in education, I definitely am a problem solver. I think as special educators, we are naturally embedded to that. Our educators are definitely dealing with the ACEs that Shane was talking about. Our kids are coming into our schools with a whole lot more than just needing to learn to read and write. We need to learn to deal with those behaviors, and I'll answer more questions on that if you would ask them. So, thank you.
Thanks. My name's Tim Jandever. I have no background in education whatsoever. We have a educational commissioner. We have a myriad of SAU people, all highly educated. We have a principal, we have an assistant principal, and then a whole lot of teachers. We've had, I think I forgot how many, but so many principals over the years that I've lost count. We've had practically as many administrators in the SAU. It's been a mess, as many of you know, legal lawsuits and everything else. Throughout it all, we've been missing one thing. And I've preached it before, and I'm going to continue preaching it, and that is accountability. In all of those principles, as far as I'm concerned, we only had 2 that were worth having. In both cases, they were bringing the school up, the schools were doing better, and in both cases, for a variety of reasons, the school board did not support them. One left, actually they both left, resigned and left. And it's kind of too bad. So we had previous to the current principal, Wendy Desprez. Under her, for 2 years, you can go look, the school improved quite a bit. A lot of people didn't like her. She's a live wire. I always teased her. I had to get my mind in gear, my brain in gear. I had to get into overdrive just to keep up with her and how she talked, and she was just so fast. She was in every corner of the building. She would be out sledding with the kids, etc. And yet she was allowed to leave. Shouldn't have happened. Since then, we've dropped. This last year, we dropped 54 points out of 231 schools. I think that's just extraordinarily sad. I've heard so much talk over the years. As many of you know, I was on the school board for some time, I think 7 years. I really, to be honest with you, thought I was done with the school board. But seeing that drop and many other things that are going on, frankly, I'm back in it, and I really think what we need is accountability. And these people aren't doing the job. They shouldn't get raises until they can. It's just that simple. We need to make them understand that in order to stay here and work for us and to get raises, they have to show us they can do the job. They have not. Thank you.
Any questions for the candidate?
I have one. Just one.
State your name, please.
My name's Lois Gillingham. I have one question for each of you, and Mr. Moderator, I want a simple yes or no answer from each of you. How do you feel about, do you feel we need a resource officer in the elementary school?
You just want me, yes or no?
Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Okay. All I wanted to know.
Okay.
I like those questions.
Yeah. Please use them up.
I'll use this one so I don't have to.
Sorry?
Okay, there's 2 warrant articles about school safety. I'd like each of you to talk about why they're important, or if you think they're not important, why they're not important.
Okay, so you talk about the SRO and the construction.
Construction yeah.
Okay, I'll start with the SRO. So one of the things that we were talking about was the ACE, Adverse Childhood Experiences. And I'm going to go real quick into this story. I told it to the budget committee. SRO Potter was been at the school as long as I've been here. It's 13 years. And there was a student that she noticed that something wasn't wrong, or something wasn't right. And that she was depressed, that she was having some issues. And she didn't show up at school one day, and Officer Potter knew something was wrong. She just knew, right? Because she was with that student every day, seeing things. And all these, when a police officer sees things differently from a teacher, right? And she knew something was wrong. She went to her house, right? And when she went up the stairs into her bedroom, the girl had a gun to her head. And Officer Potter had to tackle her and take that gun away from her, right? Because she saw things. And that's why I'm in huge support of SRO. Yes, it's gonna, if there was a shooting at the school, that the police officer, right, he might be the first one shot. He actually might be the one that saves the day, all right? But there's other things that a school resource officer does. It gives the students more respect for law enforcement, right? They also, they're a mentor, they're a counselor, right? And these adverse childhood experiences, they recognize them quicker. Right? And then that child could also go up to that police officer and say, you know what, I am being physically abused, I am being sexually abused. And the police officers can pick up on those. Now the construction, very simple. Construction of that school is a horror show, right? Because you got 2 main entrances, right? And I know Tim knows all about this. I know he's not a big fan of the construction, it's a big cost, but we've had this issue for years. There's 2 entrances, right, and people can get buzzed in for both entrances, right? We want to block one entrance off so it's more secure, right? One way in, one way out for when parents come to the school, when visitors come to the school, right? So they're not coming from every direction, and that's why we're doing that.
So yes, I also support the SRO position. As a former educator from schools that had the position, just the same things that Shane was saying. they're highly trained in a different way than an educator is. An educator is supposed to teach. In this day and age, they're having to teach differentiated learning for all kids in their classroom, on top of whether or not they have a 504 plan, an IEP plan, because their kids are walking in the door with a lot more trauma. Kids are walking in the door with significant losses. They're walking in the door not being fed. They're neglected. They have physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse. Teachers are not trained to recognize all of that. We do provide some professional development around those topics, but they're not trained. And like he said, the police officers are much more highly trained. It also gives the teachers someone to go to when they have those suspicions, to bounce things off a lot quicker, so that there's a better communication immediately if a child is in need. So in the case of Miss Potter and that student, if they had recognized that in school, a teacher had recognized, hey, she's not here, can you check on her? There was a chain of reaction time that happened there. It happens a lot quicker when you have an SRO in the school system. So 110% support SROs. In regards to the building updates, I support that as well. We're seeing shootings across the country. We don't want to be that next school shooting. And you can't tell me that just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean it's not going to happen. We have a lot of guns in this town. It's a matter of time for something to happen. We need to be prepared. We need to reduce those entrances down to 1. I also want to know what the other non-transparent security measures we have in place. It's one of the reasons I want to be on the safety committee as well. We absolutely need to make those changes. One of the things that I would like to see is a little bit more transparency about the things that can be transparent, so we know what the safety measures are in town. And also, are there any savings or cost benefits to putting these two things in place? Insurance-wise, this was a question I think when I started pursuing the school board and asking about the different issues in town and things like that, I met with a lot of different people, and one of the questions I had to Brian was, when you look at these issues and you look at, we know it's going to cost X, Y, Z dollars for SRO, we know it's going to cost for these upgrades, are there other cost savings? What are the cost savings, whether it be that we're getting professional development in for teachers, or for that SRO to come in, or this building safety with insurances in the schools? Do our insurance policies go down because we provided these upgrades or these trainings, professional development teachers? We've given the population more tools in their toolbox to handle these kids that are coming into our schools. So those are questions that I will continue to ask as we pursue these different topics, as I pursue the school board and things like that, because I think being transparent with where there is savings or where it's going to save us money down the road will be helpful in making those decisions.
My primary interest in Northwood School is education. I will say that 6-7 years ago, we spent quite a gob of money on security. We put in a card slide system, many cameras, and immediately, and when I say immediately, within 2 days, all of that money went to waste. And what I mean by that is that people were piggybacking in. So one person would slide the card, and then a whole bunch of people would follow in. And if you stood outside, you could see that parents and people that nobody knew were doing that. It came to the school board, and the school board voted 3-2. Scott Bulger and I voted that they could not piggyback. 3 other members voted that they could, and that has continued to happen today. If you went to Nottingham, for instance, they also have a slide system, and they have a big sign on the front of their doors that you better not do it or you're going to be in trouble. Security takes a dedication. If you don't follow the rules, it's worthless. It would be extraordinarily easy to block every door but the door at that little, I don't know, alcove or whatever you want going into the gym. Put a high fence across there, put an electronic gate, and stop people there. It's not going to cost $480,000. The $60,000 they have left over from last year would be far more than enough. And make it very clear to all of the teachers, because they're going to break it, that if you go out one of those other doors, you're going to be reprimanded, and if you do it again, you're gone. But that won't happen. I'm sorry to say. As far as the SRO officer, we have, and I had to go listen to it on the tape, a lady come in and talk forever to the Budget Committee on the importance of an SRO officer. And everything that was her concern, none of it was safety. It was all things that a guidance counselor should be handling. We have 2 guidance counselors in the school. The standard in the state is if you have 500 kids, you're supposed to have 1. We have 360 or so kids, and we have 2. They should be handling this. In a K through 8 school, I would not want my kid to go to a school in a K through 8 school that has a police officer, period. I think it's great over at the high school. They deal with a whole different bunch of stuff. I wouldn't, not in a K through 8 school, not at all. Thank you.
Other questions? Anyone else have a question? If not, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank all the candidates for coming tonight, and thank all you citizens for showing up.